Stratospheric polar vortex versus the Madden-Julian oscillation. We have got a big interesting test coming up with regards to the current cold spell. Yes, it's easing at the moment, but it looks as if it's going to come back in a pretty big way next week, increasing the threat of more significant snow across the UK as well as Ireland, across much of Europe also. And the test will come as the MJO is expected to rotate back into the phases of 4 and 5, which are warm phases that delivered a very mild middle portion of December. And up until now, this, I believe anyway, that's my personal opinion, and I'm sticking to it. I believe the MJO has been a pretty good indicator as to where the pattern has been going so far up until now. And we are reaching the middle portion of the winter season so far. And I think, anyway, the winter forecast has played out really well. And the big test is going to come with regards to what's going on up at within the stratosphere over the polar region here, because there has been significant changes taking place. And do we start to see a bit of a handoff between MJO influence and the stratospheric polar vortex influence? We'll get to that in just a second, but let's recap where we've been so far. I strongly believe the El Nino combined with the strong positive autumn Indian Ocean dipole drove the wettest October to December period in recorded history for the UK and Ireland now. I think we're now starting to bin the Indian Ocean dipole scenario because we're starting to lose that influence. The MJO then took a little bit more centre stage. We've seen phases 8 and 1. That, I believe, delivered the cold end of November, beginning of December. Then it was expected in a pretty amplified fashion to then rotate through 2 and 3 into 4 and 5. We've seen the very cold anomaly, which ended week 1 of December, turn to above average temperature-wise during the month of December. And now we're starting to see almost a repeat cycle within 2, 3, and now you can see it's expected between the 10th and the 24th of January to rotate back through those warm phases. However, the stratospheric polar vortex situation is very interesting. But before we look at that in a little bit of detail, this is where we stand so far. So we have turned the corner a little bit with regards to the warm anomaly, which started off the first 4 days of January over the UK. We're starting to see the blues showing up here. Look at how cold Northern Europe is. Remarkable cold start to winter up here. It's actually one of the top 3 coldest starts to a winter in recorded history up here. And that is a big thing to say, by the way, especially in this day and age. 2023 globally being the warmest on record, second warmest for the UK. Despite the fact that we've got such warmth, I think the El Nino, Indian Ocean dipole, warm Atlantic, driven increased rainfall across the UK and Ireland here. But as I've said before, Joe Bastardi's thinking with regards to increased rainfall during the second half of autumn, sometimes where the wettest conditions are, that's where the cold trough wants to go in the winter season. We've seen pretty much an example of that in November, beginning of December. Remember all the rains October and November, then we had the cold spell. Now we've, of course, seen another significant spell of rain during the month of December, beginning of January. Do we see the cold then following? I think you could argue that up until now it's been a weak, borderline moderate cold spell for the UK. Not hyping things up. It's not been a particularly significant spell of cold by any stretch. What may come down the road next week may be a little bit of a bigger deal. But again, by January standards, let's keep our feet in the ground. Let's not get too carried away by this. But this is the temperature anomaly for the first 10 days of January. The Madden-Julian oscillation, like I say, is expected to rotate into phases 3, 4, 5. Now, if you look at the North Atlantic oscillation, it's expected to go, according to the GFS ensemble anyway, up to neutral conditions towards the 20th of January, which is rather interesting. The Arctic Oscillation too, if I can get to the right chart, it would certainly help. Is it also expected to go back towards neutral once again? So it backs up the idea that I have with regards to the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation going towards neutral here. But this is the caveat, folks. Now, this is a tweet here by a stratospheric polar vortex expert by the name of Dr. Amy H. Butler, showing that within the lowest portion of the stratosphere, remember what's going on at the moment here, we've got that building area of high pressure just north of the UK, that is going to retrograde up towards Greenland here. Then we keep our eyes on a deepening trough over Scandinavia. Also, there's a negative here just to the out over the subtropical Atlantic. We're keeping our eyes on both the deepening trough over Scandinavia and the trough over the Atlantic. What happens is, and well, let's actually have a look at this, but let's just one step at a time, Mark. I'm getting myself carried away here. I do apologise for that. GFS stratospheric polar vortex structure. Now, this is fascinating stuff. Forget 10 millibars, forget 50 millibars. This is down at, probably at the 50 millibar level right enough. But notice something here, right? So this is the map flat out. And you can see North America, and you can see Greenland, and you can see Europe. Notice here that within the lowest portion of the stratosphere, we've actually got a split, almost like a trousers type structure to the polar vortex. And what's happening is the projection is between the 16th by the 16th of January, the modeling is indicating that the PV within the lower portion of the stratosphere splits in two. Now, it's not quite a designated sudden stratospheric warming or a reversal in the winds, but it's not actually that far off it. And if you look at that, we've got one piece going into North America. We have got the models all over a major shot of bitterly cold air, the tropospheric polar vortex, sending a shot down through North America and into Texas. But we also have another piece of the PV, that other piece, into the northern half of Europe here. And it looks as if the strong block within the 500 millibar level over over Greenland by the 16th of January is splitting the vortex within the lower stratosphere. So it's the troposphere affecting the stratosphere. And this could throw the MJO theory out the window. This is where the MJO may hand off to the stratosphere, and that becomes the dominant driver. So this is going to be a very fascinating thing, because if we look at the CFSV2 for the upcoming 7-day period, and the CFSV2 tends to always want to go warm quicker than other models, but this is the upcoming 7-day period between the 9th and the 16th of January. Now keep in mind, the MJO is expected to go into phases 4 and 5 towards the 20th. By the time we reach week 2, we are going back closer to average, and then we flip to warmer than average. Now, you would have to take this with somewhat of a pinch of salt, but by the 23rd to the 30th of January, the CFSV2 has reversed the pattern overall here. Now, the GEFS, or the GFS ensemble, upcoming 5 days, cold. 6 to 10, colder still. And this is that northerly shot of Arctic air. Remember, areas of low pressure now trying to move in from the west here, attacking that cold air in place, increasing the chance of disruptive snow. But the 11 to 15, which carries beyond the 20th, indicates, so this is the 20th through the 25th, it's still holding colder than average here. So what is the deal here? MJO, sudden stratospheric warming, or minor sudden stratospheric warming, splitting the polar vortex, one piece into Europe, one piece into North America. Interesting stuff, right? So here's a good visual here. This is the 500 millibar geopotential height and the anomaly. So this is compared to average, looking down over the pole. Now, the standout here is the big positive. Now it's starting to drift up towards Iceland and Greenland here. It kind of bobs around northern half of the UK over the next few days. We've now entrained milder Atlantic air into the the UK and Ireland atmosphere. We're seeing the rise in the temperature. But watch what happens here. There's a couple of important things to take note here. That negative to the west-southwest of the Azores, the negative over northern portions of Eurasia here, those two features are going to almost start to move towards each other as that high then retrogrades over towards Greenland. So as we play through the loop, you can see here that it recongregates up towards Greenland, the North Atlantic. There's that trough now starting to drop into Scandinavia. So we had bitterly cold air. It eased off. We actually went almost record warm for a period of time there. Now it's expected to drop back into Scandinavia once again. And it's this subtle negative over the Azores edging towards the UK and Ireland here that is going to make for a very interesting but also quite an uncertain period next week. So this is early to middle next week, and you can see here the positive over the North Atlantic, Greenland. That's a classic negative NAO. That is going to be where the NAO peaks in the negative fashion. And it's that coming together of the cold trough driving that northerly wind in over the UK and Ireland, and the area of low pressure moving underneath the block towards the UK. That's where we have the greatest chance of seeing snow. Now, pinpointing details with regards to the snowfall is nigh on impossible at the moment because we don't know exactly how deep the area of low pressure will be, how much cold air is in place over the UK and Ireland. The deeper the low as it moves in may have more disruptive influence in the cold. The weaker the area of low pressure, the more influence the cold air will have, and the track depth, etc., will determine how much snowfall we get. Do we have a borderline rain, sleet, snow mix? Do we have more of a significant snow potential? All these questions remain open. But notice something here. As we continue to play through the loop, there is one key thing here that backs up the MJO scenario that I'm talking about. Notice here in the GFS ensemble, we're starting to weaken the positive over Greenland and over the Baffin Straits. We're then starting to pull the negative more towards the central North Atlantic. So therefore, if we're lifting that negative northwards over the North Atlantic, we've got then a greater chance of seeing milder conditions moving into the UK and Ireland. And this would be Saturday, the 20th of January here. Now, not necessarily back to the mid-levels, the mid-December, January levels of warmth, where we're seeing 15, even close to 16 Celsius. I'm not saying that, but this certainly would be the return of the westerlies and the Atlantic domination for a period of time between the 20th and the end of the month. So you can see here the GFS ensemble is backing up the warm phase 4 and 5 of the MJO. But what's going on within the stratosphere is something that cannot be ignored. This is the current warming that we're seeing at the moment here. So we've peaked that minor stratospheric warming at the moment. But if we play through the loop here, keeping in mind the tweet by Amy Butler showing the split in PV. But look at this here. This is a renewed warming, arguably even stronger warming as we move towards the 20th. Now, this here can still take place. This is, remember, 10 millibars, not the lower portion of the stratosphere. This is at the top of the stratosphere. This would be a renewed possibility of a major wind reversal at 10 millibars and a major southern stratospheric warming. So there is so much potential within this pattern. It's pretty impressive, actually. But you can see the GFS indicating that turnaround in the pattern towards the 20th of the month here. So this is what I'm talking about, looking at the big picture, leaving no stone unturned, not having a bias towards either cold or warm, but showing you the overall reality of the pattern. Remember, the winter forecast is back and forth, milder conditions, colder conditions, and back to milder. Even with a milder pattern towards the last 10 days of the month, it may be delayed, it may arrive early. Even with it, I still expect to have major cold spells in the month of February here, so all is not lost. We'll look at the details with regards to the snow prospects next week in tomorrow's video, so stay tuned for that. Hope you enjoyed today's content. Like, share, and subscribe. Lots going on, and I'll keep you posted as best I can. Bye for now.